Host Sebastian with the Restoring Human Movement podcast. Thanks for joining the show today. If you're watching on YouTube, ignore all the shakes. This is a car setup, and I always do my best to get you guys information as soon as I can. Now, I'm going to be covering the topic of lower back pain after deadlifting today. We've seen many people over the years, virtually and in person, who have been dealing with back pain after deadlifting, and in fact, they feel like they can't really deadlift anymore because it's not really worth, as they say, paying the price. Because people are still jumping on YouTube here, I will make some reiterations about what the topic is and circle back a couple times, so I apologize for that if you're a podcast listener. Now, I'll start by saying that deadlifting can be very helpful as a back therapy. It's been demonized a lot over the years, and there's a lot of people who, I saw a bunch of posts from orthopedic groups saying you should never deadlift at all. I think hopefully we're all educated enough at this point where we realize that deadlifting is a type of hip hinge. You need to have hip hinging patterns. It's a very powerful pattern to help you not only keep your back healthy, but keep your knees healthy, help you navigate or pick up heavy objects if you are going to help a friend pick up a couch to move, if you're going to pick up a child, if you're going to pick up even nominal objects that are in your garage, behind objects, etc. Like you can't really squat down to pick up a piece of plywood that's hidden behind a bunch of bikes. So deadlifting or a hip hinge pattern is needed by everybody. I don't know any exceptions for this. But also we're talking about actually the deadlift. Remember, the deadlift is a movement or it's an exercise that is part of a hip hinge category of exercises. So you can't get away without having a hip hinge, but you can get away without doing a deadlift, but you need usually some variations. And that's why exercise variations like single leg hinging, barbell hip thrusters, kettlebell swings, all these different things are different variations of the same hip hinge pattern. So the reason why I wanted to go over this back pain after deadlifting today is because I think I can spare you guys a lot of grief over the years if I just give a couple simple tips here. The first thing is, if you can't touch your toes without keeping your knees generally kind of locked, it's hard to say that you're going to have success deadlifting, doing deadlift-based exercises with dumbbells. And I say this because the dumbbells are, what are they, about 3 inches from the ground, the handles are? You can't even touch your toes. So there's limitations in how much your hip can go through that range, through that exercise, without incorporating your back. As we talked about a lot over the years, it is called a hip dominant pattern, not a spine low back dominant pattern. Although the spine is incorporated into it, the spinal muscles are active during it, we all know that, but it's not like the bias part of the exercise should be your spine. And if you run out of range with your, let's just say hamstrings in this case, your hamstrings are too tight to actually get down and pick up the weights from the ground every time, you're going to have a back dominant pattern. Now, people get away with this for a lot of years, and you've seen it a lot through group fitness. A lot of times you use dumbbells, not to say they're necessarily bad or people don't get away with it. It's more of a scenario of if you're dealing with back pain continually after deadlifting, removing a back dominant pattern from your exercise routine can be one of the biggest wins in the book. Like, simply change the object. You don't need to use dumbbells. Kettlebells have a higher elevation to it. I'd say it's about double. Would you guys say about double? By the way, you can comment on this too. And a lot of times on the YouTube podcast version, I will take comments from emails and comments that we get on YouTube to answer them this way, because there's not really a good way on YouTube to communicate directly to people. So I'd say kettlebells are probably about double the height from the floor that a dumbbell would be. And that saves those people who don't have the ability to really touch their toes a lot of back stress, okay? Now, if we look into other objects that you may use for deadlifting, this also brings to light other changes we can make. If you're deadlifting with a barbell, if you look down at the barbell, most people, I'm under 6 foot, and so the barbell intersects well below about my mid-shin height. And that is kind of low for me if I can't touch my toes. So the options are, you get better at touching your toes, which I'm not saying there's a specific way to do that. I'm just saying by any means possible over the course of time, and then your ability to deadlift safely will, with various implements, will be much better. Or you raise the object. And there's nothing wrong with raising the object. There's plenty of lifts that we can do with an elevated object. A hex bar or a trap bar is a really good option because it elevates even further, I'd say about 4 to 5 inches from barbell height. Or you can simply stack the barbell or even hex bar on other weights. If you have a squat rack, you can use the safety squat bars at the bottom to do pin pulls, which you'll actually have a lot of benefit from the deadlift if you still have the bar or implement within about an inch above or below your kneecap. So those are easy things to do, but you'll have to take a little bit of time setting it up. Personally, I wouldn't suspend the bar, meaning pick it up once from the floor and then stop your downward movement around the kneecap and pull up. If that's heavy, that's a lot more strain on the back. I'd rather you just tap it, reset, and go. And remember, I am going to go back to this a few times, that if you're having back pain while doing your deadlifts, there's a chance that your deadlifts are being poorly performed overall with form in the first place. But these are changes that we can make temporarily as you start to get your back to feel better. We see a lot of barbell athletes in our gym, in our office. We see strong men as well. They're required to pick things up off the floor. It's not, their sport requires that. Me, though, I play baseball. I don't need to be a barbell athlete, so I can get away with a lot more modifications. If you're a bodybuilder, you can get away with more modifications. If you're a pickleball player or a grandmother, you can get away with modifications. If your sport demands the depth, then we have to work a little bit harder to actually get into that lower position. Someone's asked me where I'm from. I live in California, in Costa Mesa. We do have virtual options, by the way, if you guys don't know that already. We coach people online all the time. It's very successful. It's very easy to see movement faults that people are making and form issues with some of their lifts that are just creating issues for them. Now, we're going to go into our contact, 714-502-4243, or if you search p2sportscare.com, you'll find us as well. The second thing that I like to give people in regards to overall form, let's just say you can touch your toes and you're still having problems and you feel like you've done everything right, etc. Sometimes there's missing parts with overall tension or form. The first form cue that I sometimes use with people, not everybody, is, if you guys can all see this logo on my shirt, when you're in front of the person as a coach, you should be able to see the logo on their shirt. What this does, it puts the spine into a better position from the start, and then that spine should not change positions while you're in the lift. That's a key point there. I'm not saying everybody should lift with a rounded low back or an extended low back, etc. Everybody's a little bit different, especially based upon the weight. The lighter the weight is, the more you can get away with variation. But your spine should not change while you're under load. That's kind of a problem. So usually setting up a logo up position, especially for those low back sufferers, is a really good, easy coaching tool. Let me see the logo of your shirt the entire time. The other thing is, we can use a Dan John strength coach favorite, which is crushing the oranges under the armpit, it creates a little bit more tension, or you can bend the bar. The last thing, what that does is it creates more of a lat sling. So the lats go from the shoulder down around the lower back, and it makes it so the lower back or core area stiffens, which can be very helpful when you're dealing with pain while deadlifting. Now, the other thing, which there's a great gym over by me. It's called East Coast, West Coast. If you guys haven't heard of it, Scott Bringle he's a strongman coach there. He's excellent. He coaches a lot of his athletes to hard brace. And I've met a few of the people who lift there, who they lift things like stones and very heavy objects, odd implements. That's the strongman way. And I've met a few people from there that said they've had back pain, but since coaching with a different style, they haven't had any real back issues. And so one of the main things that a lot of people that go to there don't realize until they get there is bracing strategies. So bracing is really helpful. It's tensing up, and you should tense up or have pre-tension prior to the lift. Meaning before the bar gets off the ground, you should have some tension throughout your body so it doesn't slacken as you go through the lift. And as I mentioned before, one of the big issues with having, there's a big issue with having movement of the spine while under load. So you can pre-tension it by stiffening or bracing. This is from the standard Stewart McGill methods. You can look up some of the Stewart McGill bracing as well. It's very good information. And this works out for a lot of people. I'd venture to say, though, it doesn't work for everybody. That's kind of it'd be a takeaway for those chronic back pain sufferers that feel like hard bracing is going to solve all their problems. It doesn't always. Hard bracing comes with a side effect of compression. Compression, not a bad thing if you can tolerate it, but if your spine doesn't tolerate compression, it doesn't always help you. So as we kind of find, some people will respond better to certain cues. Logo up, crushing the oranges, bend the bar, stiffen up, or tension, as we say. Other people respond to decompressive cues. One of them is push out into your weight belt, like the weight belt is light, or it's not really like, it's not around the person really tight. It's not tight on the person, and so there's a little bit of space, so you can press out into the belt, which is a great external cue to create a decompressive force called intra-abdominal pressure. The people who are there's people who are again chronic back pain sufferers that respond better to decompressive aspects, meaning that those are people who have degenerative disc symptoms. They have flattening of the vertebral bodies or the disc itself. People into their 60s, 70s, 80s usually respond better to something like this, but there's everywhere in between. Younger people tend to respond better towards the hard bracing type of cue, but it comes down to individuality. It's really hard to say that one person or one age group will respond exclusively to that one type. But I would venture to say that if you're having back pain when you're deadlifting, there is an issue associated to either your form, your tension, or the overall, what we call the environment. Like the weight is too low, the weight is too heavy. Reps and sets can come into the picture as well, but the problem is with reps and sets is that, well, I don't say the problem with, I'd say a big mistake I see people making is they do way too many total reps. This is common with some of the touch and go racing type of lifting. Generally, if you do a heavy lift, it should be probably no more than 25 working reps. If standard 5x5 for strength is pretty common. I just like to say that I'm not a super experienced strength and conditioning coach. So if there are some out there and you want to comment on that section, this is where my education starts to end. We tend to get people back into the gym, get them back into lifting, back into sport, and try to get them to organize their weight training goals appropriate to their actual, like what they want, how they're going to use their fitness. But we don't really program much beyond that. So what we call general physical preparedness is what we focus on, getting you back into all patterns of movement, which can be very helpful for settling some of these problems as well. Remember, if you just jumped on as well, we do have virtual options, 714-502-4243, or go to p2sportscare.com. We also have online tutorials or programs that we have. They're really good. They show a lot of these things that I just mentioned as well. They're not an end-all be-all for everything, as like I mentioned before, individuality is what most people need, but a lot of people get away with good general information as well. If you guys are looking for help, reach out to us. Remember, I'm doing this on YouTube as much as I can around this time of the morning to help answer some of the comments you guys have. I see that there's some commenters on there. I thank you so much for being on this, and I will see you guys next time.